we returned to Canada, and it was obvious that the Indian government response, particularly through the media, was to instead attack Canada.
We're able to make sure that Canada and the United States together were creating good jobs and economic growth on both sides of the border.
The Labour minister said he didn't have much choice. Stephen McKinnon said he had to act, and that decision is generating a lot of reaction.
The Trudeau Liberals are in third place. The Conservatives are well out in front with 39% voter support.
Is this the end for Justin Trudeau? With 3 crushing by-election losses and more on the horizon, his leadership is hanging by a thread. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Brian Lilley exposes the brutal reality check Trudeau's facing. From carbon tax backlash to rising ethnic tensions, we'll show you why Canadians are saying enough is enough. Remember 2015? Justin Trudeau was the golden boy of Canadian politics. His approval rating soared to an incredible 65%. Canadians couldn't get enough of their charismatic new prime minister. He was plastered across magazine covers, taking selfies with adoring fans and promising a new era of progressive leadership. Trudeau's early days in office seemed to deliver on that promise. He made headlines by welcoming Syrian refugees with open arms. His cabinet was praised for its diversity and gender parity. The media loved him, dubbing him the anti-Trump, and fawning over his good looks and youthful energy. But fast forward to today, and the contrast is shocking. Trudeau's approval has plummeted to a dismal 31%. The selfie king has become a political pariah. What happened? As time went on, Canadians started to see through the glossy image. Promises went unfulfilled. The electoral reform Trudeau championed, abandoned. His pledge to balance the budget by 2019, broken, with deficits ballooning instead. The cracks in Trudeau's leadership began to show. Remember the SNC-Lavalin scandal? It exposed a prime minister willing to interfere in the justice system to protect a powerful corporation. Then came the blackface photos, shattering his carefully crafted image as a champion of diversity.
Columnist for the Toronto Sun, we saw the Trudeau Liberals lose badly in Toronto St. Paul's, a riding that they held for years.
Where there's a 0% carbon tax south of the border. Why does he want to create an avalanche of Canadian businesses, jobs, and paychecks leaving for America?
Asks of us was, well, how much do you know? Give us the evidence you have on this.
But these were just the beginning. Trudeau's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic left many Canadians frustrated. His government's slow vaccine rollout and confusing travel restrictions fueled growing discontent. And now? The latest polls paint a devastating picture for Trudeau and the Liberals. They're trailing the Conservatives by a staggering 20 points. It's a complete reversal of fortune that has left political observers stunned. So how did Canada's political darling fall so far, so fast? To understand that, we need to look at the specific policies that turned the tide of public opinion. And there's no better place to start than with the carbon tax, a policy that went from Trudeau's crowning achievement to his biggest political liability. Imagine a tax so unpopular, it forced a prime minister to contradict his own climate goals. That's exactly what happened with Trudeau's carbon tax. But the real bombshell? The desperate attempt to fix it only made things worse. Here's how a single exemption became Trudeau's political nightmare. The carbon tax was supposed to be Trudeau's crowning achievement. Implemented with grand promises of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and pushing Canada towards cleaner energy, it quickly became the cornerstone of his climate policy. Trudeau painted a rosy picture of a greener future, with Canadians happily embracing higher costs for the sake of the planet. But reality hit hard. As the tax rolled out, Canadians watched in horror as their cost of living skyrocketed. Suddenly, everything from groceries to gas became more expensive. Families struggled to make ends meet, and anger towards Trudeau's pet policy grew. The PM's response? He doubled down, dismissing concerns and telling Canadians to just deal with it. The numbers don't lie. Average Canadian households saw their expenses balloon, with some estimates putting the annual cost in the thousands. And it wasn't just conservative critics sounding the alarm. Even liberal strongholds started feeling the pinch. Trudeau's arrogant defense of the policy only added fuel to the fire.
We know that sooner or later, we're going to have to force an election upon Justin Trudeau to try and get him out.
He wants to impose a tariff on his own companies, a 61-cent a litre carbon tax.
We returned to Canada, and it was obvious that the Indian government response, particularly through the media, was to instead attack Canada.
His comments during public appearances came across as completely out of touch with the everyday struggles of Canadians. Then came the bombshell. In a desperate bid to salvage his sinking popularity, Trudeau announced an exemption from the carbon tax for home heating oil. It was a nakedly political move, aimed at appeasing certain voter bases. But instead of fixing the problem, it blew up in his face. The exemption exposed the deep cracks in Trudeau's climate agenda. Supporters felt betrayed by his willingness to abandon his principles, while opponents saw it as proof that the whole policy was flawed from the start. Trudeau's credibility took a massive hit from both sides. Suddenly, the man who promised to be a climate champion looked like nothing more than a desperate politician clinging to power. This carbon tax disaster has become the perfect symbol of Trudeau's failed leadership. But it's just one piece of the puzzle. To truly understand how Canada's once beloved PM fell so far, we need to look at another crisis that's tearing at the fabric of Canadian society: the alarming rise in ethnic tensions. Remember when Canada was known for its peaceful multiculturalism? Those days might be over. From Brampton to Calgary, ethnic tensions are boiling over into shocking violence. And Trudeau's response? It's left Canadians questioning if he's the right person to keep the country united. The attack on a Hindu temple in Brampton sent shockwaves through the community. This wasn't just a random act of violence, it was a calculated assault by Sikh radicals that erupted into an all-out brawl.
Flip-flopping between the Conservatives and the Liberals for a while now, and trust me, it's going to turn blue again.
Approach was dumb. It was dumb to let the Americans reimpose Buy America rules that Harper had got lifted. It was dumb.
The federal government says Canada cannot afford to bear the economic impact of work stoppages at its two largest ports.
The incident left locals stunned and exposed the deep rifts forming in Canadian society. For years, Canada prided itself on being a multicultural haven. People from all over the world came here to build better lives, living side by side in harmony. But under Trudeau's leadership, that image is crumbling fast. The Brampton Temple attack isn't an isolated incident. At the University of Calgary, an angry mob physically barricaded an Israeli spokesperson, preventing him from speaking. These explosive confrontations are becoming more common, painting a picture of a country spiraling into chaos. So where's Trudeau in all this? His response has been weak at best, disastrous at worst. Instead of taking a firm stance against ethnic violence, he's waffled. His failure to act decisively has only emboldened extremists on all sides. Even more troubling are Trudeau's connections to radical elements, especially within the Sikh community. These relationships, which he cultivated for political gain, are now coming back to haunt him. Instead of calming tensions, they've added fuel to the fire. The rise in hate rallies and ethnic clashes is tearing Canada apart. Communities that once lived in peace now eye each other with suspicion. And with each new incident, faith in Trudeau's ability to unite the country erodes further. Canadians are asking tough questions. How did we go from a model of multiculturalism to a powder keg of ethnic tension? And more importantly, is Trudeau the right leader to get us back on track? As ethnic divisions deepen, Trudeau's political future looks increasingly uncertain. But the chaos isn't just on the streets. It's spreading to the halls of power.
Tamara Jansen, who held the riding from 2019 to 2021, is running again for the Conservatives.
Super consequential, both from an economic perspective and from a labor perspective. And I'll sort of take you through both of them, starting with labor.
Under the Canada Labour Code. Under Section 107 of the Code, I've directed the Canada Industrial Relations Board to order that all operations and duties at the ports resume.
Up next, we'll look at the growing rebellion within Trudeau's own party and why some Liberal MPs are secretly plotting against their leader. Justin Trudeau's grip on power is slipping, and the whispers of dissent are turning into shouts. Liberal MPs are pushing for a secret ballot on his leadership, a move that could spell the end for Canada's embattled Prime Minister. This isn't just another day in Ottawa, it's a full-blown crisis for a party in chaos. Canadian politics usually runs on party loyalty. MPs toe the line, back their leader, and present a united front. But not anymore. The cracks in Trudeau's facade are turning into canyons, and his own team is leading the charge. Liberal MPs are panicking. They see the writing on the wall, a potential wipeout in the next election. And they're not staying quiet. Some are publicly calling out Trudeau's failures. Others are whispering to journalists about the need for change. The party that once worshipped Trudeau is now turning on him. Trudeau's survived 2 confidence votes, but at what cost? Each challenge weakens him further. The secret discussions in back rooms are getting louder. MPs are asking, is Trudeau more of a liability than an asset? The atmosphere in the Liberal Party is total chaos. MPs are feeling the heat from angry voters. They know their political careers are on the line. And they're starting to think the only way to save themselves is to ditch their leader. But here's the real shocker. There's no clear heir to Trudeau's throne. The Liberal Party has become so tied to his personal brand that finding a replacement seems almost impossible. It's a political catch-22 that's leaving the party paralyzed. Brian Lilley puts it bluntly, surviving confidence votes isn't enough. The deep fractures in the party, the growing rebellion among MPs, it all points to a leadership crisis that's about to explode. As the internal chaos grows, Trudeau's position becomes weaker by the day. He's fighting battles on all fronts, in the polls, on the streets, and now within his own ranks.
But that we're seeing in elections all around, including right here in New Brunswick, is that people are focused on the challenges that their families are facing.
The NDP is in second, but they're still well back. They're at 27% support, and the Trudeau Liberals in third at 22%. That's remarkable.
To criticize governments overseas is, or indeed to criticize the Canadian government, is a fundamental freedom of Canada. But as always, we would work with them.
The question isn't just whether Trudeau can survive, but whether the Liberal Party itself can weather this storm. With an election looming and support crumbling, Canada's political landscape is on the brink of a massive shift. Will Trudeau be forced out? Can the Liberals salvage their sinking ship? Or are we witnessing the end of an era in Canadian politics? Justin Trudeau's fall from grace is a stunning reversal of fortune. We've seen how the carbon tax backfired spectacularly. Ethnic tensions are tearing the country apart, and even his own party is in revolt. Trudeau's approval ratings have nosedived, leaving him fighting for his political life. So what's next for Canada's embattled Prime Minister? He could face a leadership challenge from within the Liberal Party, potentially forcing him out before the next election. Or he might cling to power, leading his party to a crushing defeat at the polls. Either way, the Conservatives are poised to capitalize on Trudeau's weakness. The political landscape in Canada is shifting dramatically. As Trudeau's star fades, new leaders are emerging. But here's the real question keeping Canadians up at night. Can anyone unite the country and tackle the massive challenges Trudeau failed to solve? Or is Canada heading for even more turbulent times ahead?